Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about more about basic texturing, okay, and then rendering out the EXR format. Okay, so for all my geometry here, I'm just going to give it, we can use a physical material or a Arnold material. Okay, for physical material, it works with Arnold, and it also works with all the other renderers. So for in this case, I'll just use a physical material here and right-click Assign Material to Selection. Okay. Let's see here. It's too shiny here, so if we adjust the roughness here, uh, we want to leave a little bit here, not too much. Okay. Now there's a couple of things we can do. We can bring in a bitmap here. Click on this map here, base color, and choose bitmap. Bring it in here. Okay, and get a cement texture here. Okay, let's do that. Okay. Okay, so it looks like it's not mapped properly. We can do a UVW map or unwrap on this. But for now, I think it's a little bit stretched, so if we mess with this tiling here, see if that helps. Again, I'm just going to do very basic, quick run through here. Now, if we wanted to properly texture this, we would probably either add in a UVW map for each of these. So I'm just going to probably do one here so that you can see what's going on. I think that's okay. Okay, so the thing about the physical material here is if it shows up in the viewport. So if I right click on here and say show standard map in viewport, I can see it in my viewport here and how it's looking. Okay, now earlier I did the 16 here because it's stretching lengthwise here. Okay, if you do 1 1, it's attempting to stretch it one by one, which doesn't work. So maybe 16 here. And if you wanted to do further, I can select this and add in a UVW map here. And give it different types of mapping. So, you could change it to different modes here. I think it crashed. For some reason, this crashes my computer. But generally, if you use a UVW map, you can do different types of mapping here. I'm just going to restart this. Okay guys, never mind about the UVW map. It keeps crashing my machine. I'm going to move on here. Okay, so let's see what I got here so far. Okay. Now for this ground here, I can probably just you know, if you run out of time, we could just retile this ground too, so we don't have to deal with trying to paint it out. So I'm going to, instead of a matte shadow right along this line here, I'm going to replace it with a tiling texture. So I'm double clicking on this to get the interface. So I just downloaded this tile texture here. I'm going to apply it to my ground here. Assign material to selection. Right click, show standard map in viewport. Okay. Now, let's see here. It has a strange non-repeating pattern. So I'm going to go inside here, click on view image here. So you see that it's not a perfect repeating pattern, so I'm going to grab that there and crop it. Okay, so I get a more even repeating pattern here, and you can click apply here. Okay, maybe tile it up a couple times, maybe 3 times to make it smaller here. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. Okay, too shiny. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of roughness here. Now, if you feel your textures are too bright, you might need to bring it to Photoshop and fix this. Or you can also, Arnold has a layer here, like a Photoshop layer, where you can adjust colors. Okay, waiting to this updates here. Okay, so it's called a, go on Arnold here, it's down to the maps, it's called a color correct here. So earlier I felt that this tile here is too bright here, so I'm just gonna lower this here so it's not so we can make it more with the tones, more the gamma within our scene here. So And again, you can separate this in nuke and adjust, but I'm going to do it in here. So let's connect this. Okay. So this. Okay. So we basically put this as an in-between here, and if I double click on this, we can adjust this. So if I lower the gamma here, you'll see that my tile becomes a little bit darker. Maybe that's overkill, I overdid it here. Okay, something like that. Okay, double click on my bitmap here. I think I need to make the tiles a little bit smaller here. Maybe 8 by 8. Okay. Oh, my computer crashed and I didn't save the shiny parts of this, so I'm going to fix that too. This edge is a little bit off. Again, it didn't save when the computer crashed. Okay, and at this point you also want to click on this button right here to see your alpha. Okay, so this is what's going to be kept so you can composite and nuke. Okay, and you want to make sure that what you want to bring over is white and what you want to ignore is black here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to add a Turbosmooth to this here so that they're a lot smoother here. I'm going to hold it here just in case it crashes. Okay, add a Turbosmooth here. Okay, I must have something else selected. It's not giving me a Turbosmooth here. Okay, so I'm going to set it up for render now. So what I want to do is go to F10. Okay, at this point I'm going to change it to production rendering and change it to Arnold. Okay, now for here, the settings here, I want it to be less grainy and to have good edges, so I think 4 is a good one here. Diffuse 3. If you have a lot of specular, then up that to 3. Glasses, transparency to 3. Uh, and probably 2 bounces of light here. Okay, so this makes the light bounce twice. A little bit better calculation. Okay. Here, active segment, so I render out all frames from 0 to 300. And then I'm going to render, let's see here, I'm going to go for 1280 by 720 I mean, sorry, and then render output. Where do I save it? I'm going to save it into this folder. I'm going to create a folder called my renders. Okay. Okay, and I'm just going to call this my 3D render, and then maybe underscore dot exr. Okay, exr is the standard for doing VFX and animation. It's a HDRI format. Okay, click save, and you're going to get this panel. Be sure to click on this, okay, so that later on if you add in a Z-depth channel, it will automatically be added in. And click OK. Okay, and one last thing I want to do before I render is I want to select my lights here, and right now you'll see that it's grainy here, and that's because the samples here is at 1, so maybe change it to 4, okay, for both of these lights here. That way you get much cleaner, less grainy lights. Okay, so 4 I think is about good. Okay, and so this active shade window is still up here, and it's still trying to refresh. So I'm just going to close this here, and to make things render faster, I'm going to click on 8, and you can turn off this here, okay, so that you don't get the background rendering. It's still in the display because if you hit Alt B, it's still here, right? But the renderer, when you render, this is what shows up. So I'm going to turn it off. Okay, make sure again active segment, save my file. Okay, just in case I get a power outage or something, I'm going to save this as B here. Okay, and then I'm just going to ready for render. So I click on this render, and it's just going to render the black here. Okay, 300 frames. This is probably going to take about a half a day on my computer. So I'm going to turn this off, and then the next time we'll open this int nuke and set it up, and I'll show you how to set it up and adjust colors to make it match. And one final check here, I'm going to turn on my alpha channel just to make sure this is what I have. Okay, so this is what's going to go over to nuke. Okay.